Okay, so Rumi part 2, and we are in this book. Okay, so today I'm going to need your help. So this class I want to do with you, I want to learn from you today exceptionally. You will grace me with your wisdom. So we'll go into the text, and because again, right, I think I mentioned, right, any wisdom text, any type of the genre of wisdom literature, which is throughout civilizations, right? You have Hindu wisdom literature, Chinese wisdom literature, Hebrew, Muslim wisdom literature that we're doing now. It's always meant to open something within the reader, right? Everyone responds differently to this text, right? We are all responding differently when we read it. We are all triggered differently. Our mind is cracked open differently. Our hearts are moved differently. So these texts, this kind of wisdom texts, are meant to awaken something in us, right? So again, if I am just the one teaching this kind of text, it's only me sharing my awakening with you, but you're not sharing your awakening with me. So today I'm going to rely on your awakening, right? Whatever the text inspired in you. Of course, I'll introduce it a little bit. There's some connections with Plato I want to talk about. And then we'll go into the details, and you will teach me today. So I'm going to focus on the ladder to heaven. I feel like I can't hear myself talk. Like there's this noise. Can you hear this noise? Was this noise here before? No, right? Do you remember?
Like a fridge motor.
What?
It sounds like the motor of like a refrigerator.
I know. Was this here before? It's just me now? Do you remember this noise? You think it was here before? I can't hear myself speak. Like I can't focus on my own thoughts. Okay, I will try. Page 13, the ladder to heaven. Okay, to understand this text, we have to go back to Plato, because Plato here, just like last time, remember we talked a little bit, what did we talk about? We talked about Plato, so we're going to talk about Plato again. Except this time we're going to pick a different text from the Republic of Plato, which is the Allegory of the Cave. How many of you know the Allegory of the Cave? 1, 2, 3, the front row. Okay, back row 2. Okay, good. So I'll remind you of this story because this is the backdrop of this particular text. So according to Plato, he tells a story. So I'm going to tell you the story, and then we'll try to interpret it, and then we'll get into this text. So here's a story that Plato tells about what it means to be human, about the human condition. He says, we are like people in a cave, right? We have been bound and chained in this cave in a way that we are all facing the back of the cave. So nobody is seeing the entrance of the cave. So imagine this cave, and everyone is sitting there, chained in a way that they cannot turn around, and they're all facing the back. Now, outside of the cave, you have ordinary life, people in the street, vendors, animals, carts, whatever is going on. And then you have a big fire, which is casting the shadows of what is happening in the street onto the back wall of the cave. Are you picturing this, everybody? Okay, so it's like a movie, right? The fire that is burning outside. I probably should get up and draw this. Of course, there's no pen, so I can't. Obviously, that would happen to me today. Okay, so I won't draw it. So you have this big fire casting the shadows of what's going on in the street into the back of the cave. So the people in the cave, all they're seeing are these shadows, and that's their life. That's how they've been living forever, right? That's their only reality. Now, one day, one of them somehow manages to get free, right? And so he's like, finally, now I can see what's at the entrance of the cave. So he kind of, turns around slowly, gradually, but it's hard because the light is blinding him. The light is giving him a lot of pain, but he still wants to do this. So he's kind of groping, squinting, trying to get out very slowly. It's a very painful process, but he really wants to. He gets to the edge of the entrance. The sun now is very bright. He's, tortured by the light. Little by little, he is able to open his eyes, and then he realizes, oh my gosh, this is true reality. We have been living in a dream. We have been living in a world of illusions, of shadows. This is true reality. So he's overjoyed. He goes back in the cave. He runs back in. He's like, come on, you guys, let me unchain you. I found true reality. And everybody's like, what? Shh, be quiet. Shh, shut up. We're trying to watch the shadows here, right? And so they basically shut him up. And I forget if they tie him up again, or they kill him, or they kick him out. But all these people end up staying in the cave. And so Plato is saying, we are like these people in the cave. So let's talk about this a little bit. How are we like these people in the cave? What are these shadows, and what is the true reality? What do you think? Yes.
I think when we grow up, I think the shadows are that which we place value on. So we're used to valuing certain things, and those things are very material, very physical. And I feel like it's going through certain experiences and being enlightened through those experiences to other dimensions of reality that we begin to like reevaluate what it is that we're placing value on. And then
Okay, very good, right? Yes, you want to add?
I believe the shadows are something more of something that we perceive as real. We think this is all that there is. And then if we take a step outside, we see that reality is actually real. And what we've been looking at is nothing more than a sham. Yet most of the world rather ignore that and go back to what they were looking before because that's what they're comfortable with. Going out into the real world is a stark contrast to what the reality that we perceive it is.
So what are we perceiving that's so shadowy? What part of reality do you think is the shadow?
The world as we see it.
So there is the world as we don't see it. That is the real reality?
The way the world works is the real world. And the way we look through it through ourselves and through our own perception.
I see what you're saying.
That
Okay.
is the shadow.
Got it. Okay, nice. I hadn't thought of it like that. That's good. Okay. Good. I'll come back to that. Mahmoud. Okay, good. Yes, you guys are synthesizing very well what we've been doing so far, right? So good. So actually the meaning in the text is pretty close to what you were saying, Yatov, right? There's two realms for Plato. There is the material realm. So this is everything that we do most of the day. Everything we see, we touch, we eat, we want, we desire, right? Everything. Like, for example, you get up in the morning, you're hungry, then you go to school, you get a grade, and you're thinking of your future, your job, and then why didn't she text me yet? Why didn't he, invite me to, right? And these are most of our concerns, right? Material concerns, right? We live really in this material bubble, right? And for Plato, there's actually another dimension, which most of us miss because we are so enticed and locked into this material dimension. And for Plato, this other dimension is what he calls the ideal dimension. So there is how things are, and for Plato, there is how things should be. So the material realm is how things are, and the ideal realm is how things should be. So this is when we begin to think a little higher than our main preoccupations, right? This is when we start to think about world peace, right? Or about equality, or about finding true love, or about truth, right? Anytime we start to think on a higher level than just I'm hungry and I want to go with this person here and I want to go see this movie, right? Anytime we start thinking, man, I wish things were like this rather than how they are, we are entering this higher dimension, right? Of how things ought to be, how things should be, right? The world should be a better place. There should be more equality. There should be an attention to climate change, right? There should be less poverty, right? Anytime and this is way beyond now your food and your partners and your career, right? You're thinking beyond, you're just you, to how things should be or could be better. Does that make sense? You're seeing the two realms, right? So for Plato, right, when we finally move away from just thinking of my little happiness, my career, my food, my partners, right, and we start to think on the level of how things should be, that is when we step out of the cave into the true reality, into the truth of who we are meant to be as human beings. We were never meant to dwell strictly in the cave. We were always meant to step out and see the true reality, which for Plato is the realm of the ideals, which inspire us, right? Anytime you're inspired by an ideal, you're stepping outside of the cave, right? Anytime you follow an ideal of how things should be and you try to make the world a better place, you're stepping out of the cave, right? Okay. Basic idea we need for Rumi here, two realms, physical, metaphysical. Okay, metaphysical, M-E-T-A, P-H-Y-S-I-C-A-L, metaphysical. Meta in the Greek, beyond, right? Metaphysical, beyond the physical. So, for Rumi, right, for Plato, we kind of move from one dimension to the other by ourselves, right? It's the person gets freed, is curious, wants to know, and slowly gropes and makes their way out of the cave. Here we have a similar story, right? We also have in Rumi a switch from the world to heaven, right? Same idea, right? The ladder to heaven. This is the idea. There are two realms. There is the worldly realm, which is what Plato called the material realm. But for Rumi, there is a second realm, like Plato, right? This realm, of course, is not so much the realm of ideals, it's the realm of the spirit, the realm of God, right? The realm of heaven, right? But the difference between Plato and Rumi is that for Rumi, the shift from one realm to the other is not spontaneous. And this is what you guys were talking about, right? We need the physician to give us, right? In a way, for Rumi, we are, as long as we're stuck in the world, we are like sick people, right? We are like ill, right? We are not healed. We are not awakened. We are not enlightened. We are like lying down dead, right? And so the shift from the worldly to a higher realm, which is the spiritual realm, the realm of the heavens, the realm of God, actually we need to be pushed to get there. And what is the medicine that is given to us in order to push us from the world to the heaven, from the worldly realm to the heavenly realm? Yes, Epstein. Suffering. Okay, so when he talks about the physician here, who is he talking about in the text? God, right? God comes as a doctor, and he's going to give us now this pain, right, or this gift of suffering, and this is what is going to start our journey from the worldly to the heavenly. Otherwise, we have no incentive, right? As long as we're comfortable in the worldly realm, why should I look elsewhere? Right? But the moment I start to suffer in the worldly realm, the moment everything becomes uncomfortable and unbearable, is when I'm going to crack open and begin to search and long for and seek a higher level of existence, right? So that's very important. Let me say that again. As long as I'm comfortable in the material, in the worldly realm, I have no incentive to explore anything else. But the moment I am in pain and in discomfort and I am, going through a lot, something in me will begin to crack open and I will be receptive, right, to this other realm. So let's go now into the text and look at 4 ways, right, 4 medicines that most of us will taste in our lifetimes. And this text in a way is very profound, very, very useful, because once you get the taste of this kind of suffering, you know that it's actually medicine, right? So 4 types of suffering we're going to study. Now you know that the time when you enter these sufferings in the future, when you find yourself with this kind of suffering, you know that actually this is medicine that is actually going to push you in a higher level of yourself, right? So this is very reassuring. Yes?
I have a question about comparing suffering to medicine, because I think one of the big things that we said last class is that suffering on its own doesn't really just inherently make someone better. They have to also do the actions and be receptive to it and suffer the right way. So it's kind of different from medicine, because medicine on its own does usually cure the illness.
Well, it's very simple. I will clarify right away. Suppose your doctor comes to you with a potion which tastes disgusting, right? There's 2 ways we react to such a potion. What are the 2 ways? Exactly. Most of us spit it out, so we don't get the benefits. Most of us, when we encounter suffering, me included, we spit it out. Like, oh, hell no, I'm not going through this, right? And we either avoid it, or we escape it, or we repress it. We refuse the medicine, right? To swallow the medicine is what will heal us. And most of us do not know how to swallow suffering. We don't know how to embrace it. We don't know how to accept it. and we don't know how to really experience it. And that's why does that answer your question? That's why we don't heal, right? We stay, yes, Mahmoud. So here, so this is different from Maimonides, right? Maimonides never from God, from us. This is a Muslim perspective where, and if you read more of Maimonides, he's often debating with Muslim scholars, and one of the debates is that a lot of the Muslim scholars used to believe that God is the origin of everything. He's the creator, he's the judge, he is in total control, right? Similar to the book of Job, where God is seen as being in total control. He gives the suffering, he takes it away, right? So here we are in that context. God has total control. Whatever is happening to you, even if it comes from someone else, God allowed it. So still God is there behind it, it's the scenes, right? So in this context, everything comes from God, good and bad. It's pure monotheism, right? In the Hebrew Bible, right? Maimonides is more Greek, right? So does that answer your question? So here, even the suffering coming from others still has purifying effect. And look at it, right? Even someone is mean to you, freely mean to you. You haven't done anything to deserve it. There is still some purifying potential there for you to work on patience and compassion and right? Always suffering has a purifying effect and therefore can be seen as a gift, right? Yes, you know.
I have a question about the comparison between Rumi's religious and physical domains with Plato's ideal and material world. It seems when Rumi speaks of the religious heaven, or whatever he speaks about, is he referring to the ideals of Plato?
No.
He's referring to commitment.
Just God, yeah. So Plato is more philosophical, it's ethics, right? That's the highest level is morality, right? The good. Rumi's, where he is the same is that he has two realms, and there needs to be a transition.
But their conception of the ultimate pious person is very different.
Yeah.
To God, whereas Plato's is the ultimate moral.
Absolutely, right? Plato is morality, the art, right? And Rumi is just God, right? So there's different. Rumi is religious, Plato is philosophical, right? Absolutely. But it's the same idea of we have to move from one realm to the other. And how we do it is different, of course, because for Plato, you spontaneously move there. And for Rumi, God has to push you by giving you the bitter cup of suffering, right? Now, let's go into these. There's 4 cups of suffering that we will all at one point taste either all of them or one at least, right? And so when you're there drinking that cup, I want you to remember this text, because then you will remember, this is what is actually happening, right? Everything that happens on the material realm, there is a metaphysical reason, right? Anything that's going on, there is something behind the scenes also going on. This is the idea here, right? Here you're drinking the bitter cup, you're crying every day for, the whole day. But behind the scenes, you're climbing the ladder, right? Make sure you write this down. This is the idea here. There are 2 dimensions to our lives, and if our eyes are not opened, if we are not perceptive as to what is truly going on, we will suffer like wretches, right? We will suffer like animals, although animals suffer very well. We will suffer like, miserable people. But if we learn to suffer and see behind the suffering what is actually happening, then we will suffer with a certain amount of grace and dignity, right? As you're drinking this cup, in the physical realm you're suffering, in the metaphysical realm you're climbing the ladder to heaven, right? The more you suffer, the higher you go. It's a metaphysical law. Those who suffer little stay in the lower rungs. Those who suffer a lot climb up to the top, right? If, of course, you know how to suffer and you're able to drink the cup. Most of us, we reject it, right? Okay, let's look at the first one. So I'm going to look at ruin the house, page 14. Cut off the water, cleft the skin, raise the fortress. 4 cups. Let's look at the first one. In one of these cups, I'm going to talk about, like I promised you, the notion of forgiveness, where I have no time now to do it. My pencil is coming apart. Okay. All right. Ruin the house. This is where I need your help. Ruin the house for the sake of the golden treasure, and with that same treasure built it better than before. Okay. Let's look at the first cup of suffering, the ruined house. What does this mean when your house is ruined? What kind of suffering are we talking about here? Yes. Hmm? Okay, so yes, the house could be the. So what would the house represent in the physical? Ah, okay, the body. Yes, sickness, right? Ruin the house. The house, usually, you're right. In this tradition, it is that which contains the soul. So it's the body, right? And so when we ruin the house, we lose our health. Now the text is saying we lose our health for the sake of the golden treasure. What is this golden treasure that we can find in the middle of disease? You should be, ah,
Appreciation.
okay, right? Appreciation for what?
For just being functioning normally, being healthy.
Ah, but you're sick right now, so what kind of appreciation?
Well, you appreciate your prior states.
Ah,
Say your health
do you
is
though?
better,
Do
or your
you
future.
do you appreciate your prior state when you're miserable?
You'd give anything to go back.
Okay, okay. Yes, you start to see in a different light. What else, Epstein?
That's good.
Okay,
This is a great one.
gold. Thank you.
After you recover from it, then you appreciate your health.
Ah, yes, that's true. But in the middle of it, where's the treasure? I don't see that. I'm sick. Where is the treasure? Yes. Oh, very good, right? Sometimes the courage, right, to keep going, the courage to fight. You draw from within yourself resources you didn't know existed. I have a friend, she has been struggling for 10, 15 years with Lyme disease, the chronic type. I don't know if it's unbearable to watch her, right? I would not have lasted as long as her, right? She's not going to stop, right? She's crawling through this thing, right? It is crushing her on every level, physically, neurologically, emotionally, and she just keeps going, right? She has strength she did not know she had. She is digging, drawing from a very deep well. She's discovering parts of herself she didn't know were there when you're going through this, right? Yes, you know.
Also maybe humility.
Yes, humility. Oh my God, yes. When you're sick, it's gone. Gone is the, cockiness and feeling you're in control and arrogance. You're crushed, right? Remember Job, how he suffered? What became of Job after his suffering? What was the treasure that Job discovered in his suffering, in his physical suffering? Epstein.
Humility.
Humility, right? Exactly, right? So there's many things you can discover. What?
Humility, humbleness and perspective.
Perspective, right? Absolutely. But the problem, we don't discover the treasure because we are fighting the suffering. And if we're a fighter type, this is a problem in this context, right? Because we want to reject the suffering. We don't want to be going through this. Why me? Right? Anytime you ask the question, why me? Or you ask the question, right? This is so unfair, and so forth. You're resisting. The text here is saying, let the house be broken so that you can find the treasure. As long as you're resisting and asking why me and having a pity party for yourself all day long, you're going to miss the treasure and you'll suffer the same. Not going to take the suffering away. So there's a point when one has to surrender to the suffering and allow oneself to come undone so that we can begin to distinguish the treasure that is hiding there, right? Amishai.
I have a question. So, I understand, the concept of embracing the suffering, but if you have, a severe sickness, wouldn't it be, foolish stuff, to say, oh, I'll embrace it and learn from it and, trying to fight back?
No, you fight, right? Of course you fight, but you don't fight the suffering. You fight the illness, right? Obviously you fight, right? And you're drawing, like you were saying, you're drawing this deep strength. So what I'm saying is don't resist the situation. Accept it and, do everything you can, but don't be sitting there, why is this happening? Because there's the physical anguish and there's the mental anguish. Just get rid of the mental anguish, embrace it, know there is a treasure, and allow yourself to see it, right? Okay, here's the second one. This is where, so let's look at this one. Cut off the water, cleanse the riverbed, then cause drinking water to flow in it. Okay, what does this water represent here? What does water represent in general? When you think about water, what does it do to you, and what would be the equivalent in the world? Yes?
Is it like material desires and things that we want?
Okay, things that nourish. It's not just that we want, because they might not nourish us, right? If I want to see a movie, I can do without the movie. What are the things that we cannot live without, or we think we cannot live without? What's the main thing that we cannot live without as human beings? You can be in a desert island. Sustenance. And what kind of sustenance? Because there's physical sustenance and then there's another type of sustenance. Yes. Louder? Okay, absolutely, right? The water can represent the love that flows in our lives, right? The love that comes from our friends, from our parents, from our family, from our pets, from our beloveds, right? And one day, that water is cut off. Now what? What does that mean when the water is cut off? What do you feel how do you feel at that moment when the water is cut off? That friend is not there anymore. That parent is not there anymore. That beloved is not there anymore. How you feel at that moment? Yes.
Alone and
Isolated and like you're gonna die. This thing was feeding me, right? This love was feeding me. This love was nourishing me. This love was my home. This home is gone. What will become of me now? This is what is coming in your head. What will become of me now that this person is gone, right? Text is saying, cut off the water, but now what do you need to do? Cleanse the riverbed. What does this mean? Yes.
purify your heart.
Very good. Now let me talk about forgiveness. Quick workshop on forgiveness. Very important concept in a class on suffering. Because if you know how to forgive, you know how to suffer. I've been talking about this whole time that we need to suffer gracefully. We need to learn to suffer. Forgiveness is the art of suffering in a way that the suffering will heal you instead of destroy you, right? Suffering can do two things. It can destroy us, right? It can make our hearts close up. It can make us bitter. It can make us resentful. It can make us that angry woman or that angry man, right? But suffering can also purify us. The difference between what suffering does to you resides in your ability to forgive. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit now. Forgiveness. Concept which predates Islam, predates Christianity, very ancient Hebrew concept. The root in the Hebrew, we're going to learn one Hebrew word today, is nasa, N-A-S-A. N-A-S-A. That's one of the words for forgiveness in the Hebrew language, right? We're going to work from this word because it's very illuminating concept in the Hebrew. It will really help us understand. Nasa literally means to carry, okay? To carry. Forgiveness, therefore, literally means I'm carrying what you did to me. You do it, and now I'm carrying. Now, that sounds terrible. Who wants to carry that, right? So let's analyze. What does it mean when someone does something to you that you choose to carry it rather than doing something else? Let me ask you this, like this. What is the natural response when someone punches you in the face? Let's just be very brutal. Someone punches you in the face, what's your reflex? I think even Jesus had to force himself to, right? He wept a whole night in the garden to be able to do that. So, what is the reaction? So you don't get to answer anymore. What? Yes, the reaction. You like, it's like, it's immediate. We hit them back. We react. We throw it back in their face. Now, this should help clarify what it means to, instead of hitting back, to carry. What does it mean? What is the opposite of hitting back and reacting to the suffering that is inflicted upon us? What is the opposite? Yes?
Restraint.
Restraint. And what do you do with that suffering? You just received it. You want to throw it back in their face. And instead, what do? You carry it. You absorb it. Okay, so that's forgiveness. Okay, so I'll explain now what that means. But forgiveness, just raw definition, and then we'll go into what that means. Forgiveness, instead of throwing back in the face, you absorb it. You carry it. Nasa, N-A-S-A, right? So to forgive is the ability to not throw it back in the other person's face, but to absorb it. Now, that sounds very toxic, so let's explain what that means, right? What does it mean when someone hurts you, betrays you, someone does something terrible to you? What does it mean to absorb it instead of hitting back? Or let's ask it like this. What are some ways we hit back? Someone betrays you. Let's imagine your best friend betrays you. You're super hurt. What are some ways you would be reacting? There's two ways. inner and outer way of reacting. What's the outer way? Best friend gossips about you, tells all kinds of crazy stuff about you. Yes?
Retribution.
Yes, you do the same to her. Oh yeah, she said that about me. Well, did you know? Here's what I found out, right? What's the inner way to hit back? Because we also sometimes do it internally. Yes. Yeah. You're angry, you hate her, you cut her off, you ghost her, you never talk to her again. In fact, you never have any friends anymore because you don't trust anyone anymore, right? Even though you haven't done it in the world, it's happening. You're still retaliating in your heart. So now what would it mean to carry? What's the alternative? Yes.
Is it like you can realize that what their actions is a reflection of them, so you can learn like how to not be that kind of person so you don't do it?
Okay, excellent, right? To forgive, to carry, simply means you do not allow that person to make you into them. In other words, they are toxic to you, doesn't mean you have to be toxic to them. Let me say it again. They are toxic to you, it doesn't mean that you have to be toxic to them. In other words, you can choose whether your reaction is toxic or not. So in other words, someone hurts you, yes, you feel the pain, but you do not allow the pain to damage you. Let me say it again. Somebody hurts you, yes, you can feel the pain, you can take the hit, but you don't have to allow that pain to damage you. What is damage? Damage, resentment, vengeance, hatred, cold-heartedness, all the ways that we react, this is when the pain becomes toxic and becomes damaging. Pain will never damage you. It's what you do with the pain that will damage you. Let me say that again. Pain itself will never damage you. Don't be afraid of being hurt. It'll go away in time. What will really damage you is what you do with the pain. Do I allow this pain to make me into a toxic human being, or do I forgive? Right now, there were a couple questions. Amoroso, and then I think Mahmoud. Amoroso? What? Yes. Yes, I will help you. Yes. Here's how I did it. Here's one of the ways that I did it. A few years ago, a friend of mine betrayed me very deeply. I was hurt for a whole year. Right. Now, first few months, kept on thinking about this guy. Kyung did this to me. Can't believe he did this to me, right? And I was like thinking, yeah, he's such a loser. And I had all these toxic thoughts about this guy, right? And then I was like, no. I'm going to take the high road. I'm teaching this class, right? I'm going to forgive this guy. The way I did it was like this. You don't even have to be religious to do it, but I used the religious way. But you can do it randomly. What I did, each time the bad thought would come, I would be like, I don't want to have this thought. I want to be loving. Like I would say it out loud in the subway. Like you would see my lips moving. Like I don't want to have this thought right now. I surrender this thought, right? So I would surrender to God, but you can surrender to whatever. Who cares, right? You just the act of saying, I don't want to have this thought right now, I surrender it. This would happen every 2 minutes, okay? So every 2 minutes I would sit there. I don't want to have this thought. I surrender it. I did this for about a couple of weeks, basically the whole day, right? Because it would come every 2 minutes, the thought would pop up, another nasty thought about this guy. I mean, I don't want to have this thought on me. After a couple of weeks, they would space out a little more. So it was maybe now every 5 minutes. I would continue diligently. I don't want to have this thought. I want to be loving. After a month, it was spaced out maybe 3-4 times a day. I would have a toxic thought, right? I continue. One day, gone. The whole day, nothing. Liberation, right? So that's how I do it, right? It's very intentional desire to not allow the resentment to stay. I push it out and I tell myself, I want to feel love, I want to feel love. And one day it turns out I had only love for that person. I understood, I embraced. Even now we got back in contact, we forgave. Well, I forgave him because he didn't have to forgive me. Right? I mean, I wrote him and we, and it was completely right. I felt only love for this person, right? That's the practical way. It's a decision to detoxify all day long and to choose love over hatred. And the reason you do this, there are 3 reasons why this is important to do. For you, for the other, for the world. Now, how is it good for you? to practice this forgiveness? Tell me first. Well, how is this a good practice for us individually? Even though the other person never asked for forgiveness, you're doing this. Why should you? Why should you do it? Yes.
We'll be better, happier people.
Okay, yeah. First of all, you won't get damaged, right? The fact that I did this with this guy for about a year, I had to do this till it was completely gone. After that, I was free. My heart was open. My heart was pure. I could do anything I wanted with my heart, right? I didn't have to be, like this, always, trying to, bite and protect myself. I was free, right? So the first person you forgive for is for you. Even if the other person never recognized what they did, even if the other person never asked for forgiveness, you do it for you to cleanse yourself. You carry instead of damaging yourself, right? Now, it also helps the other somehow. How does it help the other, even though they never asked for forgiveness? How does it help them that you're doing this? Yes?
Breaks the cycle.
Yes, excellent. Breaks the cycle. The buck stops here. You're a jerk. You've been a jerk to everyone around you. Here it stops. I'm not going to perpetuate, right, your toxicity. Actually, this is a good for the world, so I'm going to come back to that. Good for the other. Let's come back to what you said. How is it good for them that you are now practicing this love versus resentment, right? Yes.
I guess they can model that same
So, but they don't see you. They're out of your life. Suppose they're out of your life. You don't see them, but you're doing this. How is this actually helping them? Somehow. How is this actually beneficial to them? Anybody heard of karma? I'm going to be super metaphysical right now. You heard of karma? Somebody does something bad and they're going to get some consequences. Guess what? You have the power to reverse their karma. This is very powerful. You have the power to reverse their karma, meaning whatever consequences they were going to go. I mean, sometimes we wish they would get the damn karma because they hurt me so much, right? I hope you get something, right? But through forgiveness, you actually interrupt their karma, meaning whatever was supposed to happen to them because of this bad action, right? This is law of cause and effect of the universe. You have now washed the slate clean for them. They can start anew. They will not be reaping any bad consequences from that action. It takes a very noble heart to take the karma away from. I mean, deep down, even me, I wish there would be a little bit of karma, for what that guy did to me, right? But you actually have the power to interrupt someone else's karma, just to use that expression, right? Now, how does it help the world for you to forgive? How have you contributed to world peace by forgiving? I think that's what you said, Epstein. Yes.
Well, if we didn't forgive, then we have all this anger and resentment in us that's going to come out to other people. So
Yes.
if we do forgive, then we add more love and kindness.
Exactly. When you don't forgive, you perpetuate the evil. You're just like playing telephone when one goes from one, right? I give you the suffering, you take it, you give it to someone else, and so forth, and the suffering get passed on and passed on throughout the universe. If you forgive, you stop that chain. You're not passing on the suffering, and you're contributing to a cleaner world, right? Less toxic world. So it's extremely powerful practice. It's very difficult to do because, like I was telling you, I didn't want to forgive. I wanted to hate this guy so bad. It felt so good to hate. I don't know, anybody felt this? This pleasure of hating? And the pleasure of projecting all the bad things that will happen to them, right? The karma, you're just like relishing in the bad karma they have accumulated for themselves, right? So it's actually quite difficult. It's really a muscle you have to develop to constantly be aware of the negative thought and to push it out. It comes back, push it out. It's really it's a discipline of the mind and it's a discipline of the heart, but this is the price of not becoming damaged and remaining pure so that, see the end of the text, drinking water can now flow again through you in your life, right? Even better water. So the water was cut off, and instead of sitting there in the mud, right, and digging in the mud and making the riverbed super muddy, you cleansed it so that now new water can come into your life and flow freely without all your baggage and your resistance and so forth. So really, I would encourage you, practice forgiveness in that sense, right? The other person doesn't even have to come to you to ask for forgiveness. The other person doesn't even have to Repent. You're doing it for you. You're doing it for you. And the effect is very powerful, not only on you, but on them and also on the world, right? Okay, so I guess we'll stop there. We have only 2 cups. Good enough. Okay, so next time, what are we doing? Nietzsche already? Okay, yes. Next time we start Nietzsche. So you will be doing a lot. You'll be listening to the introductory lecture, the audio question, reading the text, and doing the reading assignment. And remember, I need the printout next time. I want to make sure you talk about Nietzsche. Although it wasn't bad, your conversation. Yes, Michelle.
We have a test on Saturday.
What?
We have a test on
Do we? We don't have a test, do we? No.
Yeah.
What? On what? Oh my God, Maimonides and Rumi. That's right, they're together. Okay, guys, you have a test. You have a test on Saturday. Yes, you have a test due Saturday. The questions are in the syllabus. Please remember the notes, the notes, the notes, right? The more detailed your notes, the more filled with your notes, your test answers are. Write as much as possible. That's the highest, most likely way you'll get an A. And then, 2 questions, right? One for Rumi, one for Maimonides. And they overlap a little.
Yeah.
Huh?
Both of the questions were Rumi and Maimonides combined.
Yes, they're combined, and they overlap slightly, so be careful with that. And then you have your essay, which is your spiritual journey. Where are you at? Remember, in the essay, you need always 2 things. You need your journey, but also the texts. A lot of you are missing. You need to talk more about the texts. How is the text inspiring you? What are you learning? What is exciting you? Right, that's what we need in there. Okay, good. I'll stop the recording.